All right, good morning. We're going to get started. Dr. Drost has his tray, so he's ready. Happy Singles Day, right? Yesterday was Valentine's Day. Today's the day all the single people go to the store and buy the discounted chocolates. I was sitting there last night with a bunch of our students, and all the guys were sitting together and all the ladies were sitting together, and I was trying to figure that out. So they said today's National Singles Day. So that's a good thing, right? Welcome. Welcome. We're glad you're all here. Let's have a word of prayer. I'll introduce our speakers and we'll get started, all right? Father, we love you. We're so grateful for the day that you have given to us. We thank you for these two ladies who have come to speak. We just pray that you might give them your wisdom. Lord, you might help us to listen attentively. Help us to learn much today, I pray, that we can apply in our lives and in our community. Thank you for your grace and for your love for us. In Jesus' name, amen. Hey, two things are on your table I have to remind you of. Our Golf Classic is coming up on June the 12th. The brochure for that is there. And we have a leader-to-leader conference that we're really excited about coming up March 9th and 10th. And the documents on your table explain that to you. The little white placards, if you take a picture of that with your phone, if you're youthful enough and know how to do that, you can take a picture and it will send you to the website. And you can register directly on the website for the Leader-to-Leader Conference, which is about 2 weeks away. I know that because a good friend's not going to be here. He's going to be in Mexico. And he reminded me this morning that that trip is 2 weeks away. So I know it. March 9th and 10th. All right, we have two speakers today. Deb Reinbold is the Executive Director of the Jefferson County Economic Development Corporation. We call it Thrive Economic Development. And she's become a great friend. And I said Executive Director. You're actually the President. Okay, so she's both. It's good. She's a natural connector. Deb's talents for building relationships and recognizing synergies has resulted in partnerships that have brought the organization to the forefront of some of the most pressing challenges. She's a friend, and she's doing great work for Jefferson County, and we're thrilled to have her here today to talk about it. Bree Grace, we were talking beforehand. She is multilingual. She told me just to tell you all the unusual things about her. She began in the UP, so I called her a Youper. That was interesting. And she likes black coffee. And she's a city planner. And I'm trying to figure out how you go from being a major in French in your undergraduate program to a planner. So we'll talk more about that later. So Deb Reinbold is going to start. So Deb, if you would please.
So it's interesting when you started talking about Brea being bilingual, I thought that you meant from the UP. So, well, good morning and thank you all for joining us. Thank you for joining us. Also, Valentine's Day, if you come next week for the candy, it's 75% off, right? So, our discussion this morning, roadmap to resources, leveraging incentives to help our communities and businesses succeed. So, we're here this morning to tell you a little bit about some of the opportunities there are out there to fund some of the projects that we're looking to incent. So, Steve just did a great job of introducing both Brea and myself, and thought I'd just let you know. Honestly, Steve came to me and asked me if I could present this morning, and there's no one that I could have asked, no one better that I could have asked to join us this morning. So Brea, she'll tell you a little bit about SEH, but she's really a professional and an expert in her field, so I'm thankful that she's here joining us this morning. Thought I'd tell you a little bit about Thrive Economic Development. I'm actually an employee of Jefferson County, so all of the work that I do is free to the businesses that we support. That's important. It's also supported by the investors that we have in our organization, so that's why we've got the 501c3. But really, I'm not sure how many of you here, I see a lot of students in the room. I'm not sure how many of you here actually are aware of what economic development is, and so that's why I put this slide up. Really, we're a connector. So if there's a business that's looking to grow, we're there to help to try and make that happen. So we do that through connecting them with people, with incentives. Honestly, there's so much that we do to try and make a project happen. I can't go through all of it here, but this slide is a pretty good synopsis. And really what that does is it helps to create successful businesses, which then helps to build the tax base, which then helps to provide more services for all of you, giving your community, making your community more of a home, right? That placemaking. So that's our role. And now I'll introduce Brea.
Thank you, Deb. So my name is Brea Grace, and as was mentioned, I'm a community planner. I've been doing community planning for 25 years. Started out with French and a minor in cartography with geography, and started making maps for communities. And so learned about zoning and city planning on the job. Went back to school and got a master's degree in urban and regional planning. So my advice for students is just try stuff. Get out there, get internships, just start to experience things. And you might realize you don't like it exactly, but that helps you navigate to the next thing that's a better fit for you. So just get experience. So I work for an engineering firm. We've got planners, scientists, architects on staff, but we do a lot of engineering. And 15 of my years I've worked for different communities as their planning director and zoning administrator. And so I have learned that it's great to design communities, but it's really fun to build them and make these great designs happen. So that's why we're talking about funding today. Go to the next slide. So we're going to talk a lot about funding resources. We will make this presentation available. It's got some clickable links for grant programs and loan programs. And we also have some information about brownfields and PFAS, which is contamination that communities are finding in their water systems. Okay, so we were asked to come talk about the Infrastructure and Investment Act. But we can't just talk about that because there's been a whole lot of federal funding been coming out, starting with the CARES Act in 2020, with the ARPA funds that have been given directly to communities, cities, villages, counties, and the state. Then the Infrastructure Investment Act, and most recently, the Inflation Reduction Act. So we're plucking out of here, if you want to go to the next slide, Deb, all sorts of funding that our businesses and our communities and our communities themselves can use to help grow the businesses and help make our communities a better place. The IIJA provided a lot of funds for transportation, broadband, power grid, water systems, and resiliency. The next slide. The Inflation Reduction Act, there's a lot of funding in there for energy efficiencies, but some also for manufacturing and environment. If you go to the next slide. You can keep it. So it's a whole lot of funding. How do you follow the strings to what where the funding is that you need to get? It's confusing, so that's where we're going to help you today and just kind of pick out some things that communities have been using or that there's an opportunity coming up in the future to use these funds.
So now we'll talk a little bit. Can you hear me? Okay. So now we'll talk a little bit about Jefferson County, bring it home. I thought I'd tie this presentation into some of Jefferson County's strategic goals. So earlier this last year, we went through an updated Thrive's strategic plan for the next 4 years, and that all, of course, builds on Jefferson County's goals as well. So our 30 county supervisors developed these strategic goals that include sustainable growth and improving the lives of our residents and other stakeholders, creating a more positive fiscal environment. These businesses strengthen our economy by providing quality career opportunities and local tax revenue, which then supports our vital services such as schools, roads, fire, and police. There are two really exciting recent wins that we've got here, and that includes a $100 million expansion for Nestle Purina, and then most recently last week, the announcement of Palermo coming to Jefferson and their 180 jobs and 50 million pizzas that they'll do in a year. In order to support this business growth, we need to attract more people. of working age to the county. From 2010 to 2020, we only added 1,006 residents to the county. The unemployment rate for December of 22 within the county was 2%. That's only 908 people. So you can see we need to bring more people here. And in order to do that, one of the things we're lacking is affordable housing, or housing in general, diversity of housing. So following 2008, I mean, you all remember that, new housing plots were basically non-existent. And according to a recent market study, we learned that Jefferson County will have a shortfall of more than 2,400 housing units by 2030. Current vacancy rates are less than 2%. We want to make sure that our communities are places that everyone wants to live. Top-notch schools, safe, they offer quality recreational opportunities and access to amenities. Of course, some of you know there are communities here that don't even have access to grocery stores. All of these goals work hand in hand to bring vibrancy to our communities and increase our tax base. So we thought maybe we'd talk a little bit about communities that are on the cutting edge. So.
Thanks, Deb. Okay, so a couple examples. What we're trying to do is make our communities great places to live, great places to work, to attract that talent so that employers have employees. So a couple examples to frame what we're discussing today. The La Crosse downtown and riverfront. This has been decades in the making, but the River Point district, it is the primary spot where new development is going to happen in La Crosse. In the 1970s, the mayor started acquiring lands from the former Mobil oil site. So it was a very contaminated site, but the city had the foresight to start acquiring lands, working on the cleanup. The site grading and prep is ready. Utilities and roads are starting to go in. And now this is a great site for new multifamily residential, some commercial. So it's a great example. The next one, Onalaska downtown and riverfront. Again, this was another waterfront site. So the La Crosse site is on the Mississippi. This is on the Black River. So along the river, there was a former dry cleaner, there was a lumber yard, there were a scattering of homes and other businesses. And the city started acquiring properties in the 1990s and put together a vision plan and got some additional funding, did some community involvement, placemaking, and developed the Great River Landing. And this is in the core of the downtown. So it's in the core of the downtown. There's been more commercial businesses that have come in, also more multifamily. All of these have had a stack of funding. They've used a lot of different funding sources to get to this point. So there's not just one solution, one fix. It's a lot of little things over many years to make this happen. The West Bend Riverfront is another example where communities in the years past had their backs to the rivers, and so now they're embracing them, creating riverfronts, and it's a driver for the economy. We have Sussex Mammoth Springs as another example. So this site revolved around a former gravel pit. And after all the quarrying happened, there was a redevelopment plan. Cleanup, a plan was put together with public engagement, and now it's a great site for commercial and more residential uses. There's another more recent example, where, as Deb mentioned, that platting since 2008, 2009 has really been non-existent or just barely above non-existent. Well, that's starting to change. This site was platted years ago, and there's such a demand all across the state for housing. So this is a great example of a public-private partnership with tax incremental financing that's drawing in more industry and residents.
So I'm the one who's jumping in with some local examples. So I want to give credit where credit is due with the city of Watertown and the work that they've been doing downtown in the town square. So in 2014, from what I was finding, October of 2014, Redevelopment Resources shared the vision of what the Watertown Riverfront downtown could look like. The plan recommended a variety of improvements, including reconstruction of Main Street, rehabilitation of existing commercial properties, and riverfront improvement. Transformative recommendations included the redevelopment of the riverfront, including the creation of the town square. As you're all aware, it's now 2023. It doesn't come overnight, right? So As we were talking about the capital stack, there's a lot of different organizations that have contributed to making this happen locally. That includes the $1 million grant from the Benzine family, Bertram Belts family with their $250,000, $908,000 grant from the Knowles Nelson Stewardship Grant and the DNR, and WEDC with their $247,500 Community Development Investment Act grant. And honestly, it just keeps going. A $4.5 million project that's coming to reality here, and that's a catalyst for development here in Watertown.
Thank you. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the specific funding programs, both for communities and businesses. So we're going to talk about communities first. But when state and federal agencies provide funding to communities, they like to see it fund four things: job growth, infrastructure replacement, infrastructure expansion to support business growth, and tax-based growth. So there's a lot of different funding buckets, so to speak, for communities, and so we'll talk about these this morning. So a basic function of many communities is providing safe drinking water and clean water funds, so taking care of the wastewater collection system. Through the Infrastructure Investment Act and bill, there has been a lot of additional funding coming to the state of Wisconsin for 5 years. We are currently in the second funding cycle, but it's a low interest rate loan subsidized by EPA. But there's principal forgiveness of the loan, which is like a grant, to communities that are low to moderate income, that have a smaller population. So kind of helping those communities out where they have infrastructure that is crumbling, needs to be maintained, or if there's a compliance issue with the regulatory agencies. All of the funding from the feds and from the state comes with strings, right? So that's something that we help communities through, and generally your projects, and if your grant award is big enough, it offsets the cost for all the compliance with the strings that come with it. So the Build America, Buy America Act is something new. It takes the place of American iron and steel. It kind of goes a bit beyond what American iron and steel is requiring, but this is something new this year that projects of larger communities and with a larger population are going to have to comply with this. So that's something that we're all navigating together. The DNR has gotten additional funding through this federal program for emerging contaminants. So PFAS, for example, those legacy contaminants that we're finding in our water systems. There's funding that's coming in to help communities do pilot studies, to do an initial review of how to treat this water, to take these contaminants out, and then if that works, then invest in a long-term treatment on the water treatment systems. So that's nice that there's all this federal funding coming that's helping communities address these problems. The other big pot of money that's coming in is for lead service line replacement. So lead pipes used to be common in water systems. We found out that's not good. So taking those out is a big federal initiative lately. And so there's more monies that's coming in through bill to do those replacements. So for example, in Jefferson, the Jefferson Utilities, this last funding cycle, received $300,000 for the program. And so they've helped, this program helps, so you've got your water mains that run down the street, and then the laterals go off the mains to the private residences. So it helps replace that private residence piece, so the piece that's on private property that would otherwise be the cost of the property owner. So that's cost prohibitive for some people. And so this funding source helps with that, and helps in the past has provided 100% replacement costs, which is great. Because no one likes getting a bill in the mail for $5,000, right, to replace that. And so having this state money and federal money is important. Another example of the Safe Drinking Water Loan Program, where this worked really well, is a community called Maiden Rock. They had one municipal well, and had one municipal well, and it had fecal coliform in the well. So they didn't have a secondary well to draw from. So they built a second well funded through this program, and also used another funding source. And they received, it was probably a $1.5 million project. They received funding, 75% of the total project cost was funded by either principal forgiveness or a grant. So for communities that, it's 110 people that live in this community, bearing the costs out, the full cost on the project would be really cost prohibitive on this community. So these funding sources certainly matter. USDA provides kind of a parallel funding track for water and wastewater system improvements. It does provide a longer payback on the loan. They do offer grants too, but it's a 40-year payback. So communities that have more debt that they've incurred, they might need a longer payback period. But it's also just another option for communities to look at. Use this one? Okay. That's right.
Is this working better? Oh, much better. Okay, good. Thank you. USDA, so here's an example of Baldwin, a big wastewater treatment plant that used this funding source. So there's also a program through USDA that funds community facilities. So that's city halls, that's public works facilities, that can also be childcare facilities, educational facilities. It's a low interest rate loan based on the community's financials. They can provide a grant. So this is a funding source that Thrive wants to use locally. There's a lot of need, as discussed last time, about childcare needs in the community, and so there's some opportunities coming up where maybe this is a good funding source that can help provide that funding stacking to this. So jumping over to transportation, roads and bridges have gotten a lot of money from US DOT through these federal acts. There's, right now in Wisconsin, the priority is funding bridges. You'll be happy to know that Wisconsin is really leveraging this federal funding well as compared to other states. Other states are slowly starting to get the funding out. Wisconsin is full bore. We're going at it, and we're trying to position ourselves. If other states don't use the funding, send it to us. So it's a good time to replace bridges. There's funding directly from US DOT that communities can compete for. So we've had some awards throughout the state of Wisconsin, but there's opportunities still coming up. Wisconsin DOT, they don't just fund bridges or local roads. They fund intersection improvements where there might be safety issues. They fund trails. They help with economic development. So if you have a business that's coming in and there's a road expansion that needs to happen to get this business up and going, DOT will help fund that. And so kind of looking ahead, the Transportation Alternatives Program to help fund trails. For communities 5,000 or less, there is a March 31st deadline coming up. And then the STP local also has that March deadline, but they've had more funding cycles. The frequency of funding cycles has increased in the last few years to get that funding out.
So I know there's a lot of information here. Remember, this is available as a download, and I know this information probably is most interesting to the people here in government. So we will get on to some of these other things as well. But we thought showing you some of the impact locally would also be helpful for you, just to put some perspective to it. So here we've got the Interurban Trail project that connected Watertown and Ixonia by creating a paved trail. And it also includes a trailhead with parking, restrooms, water bottle filling station, bike racks, wayfinding signage, and bike repair station. So the construction was estimated over $2.3 million, and funding sources included a Wisconsin DOT grant for $1.1 million, a DNR grant for $655,000, and then the county matched as well at $555,000.
Thanks, Deb. Airports, that's another category where there's a lot of funding going out. Airports throughout the country have been early to take advantage of this additional funding. There's a 5-year airport improvement program that Wisconsin Department of Transportation through the Bureau of Aeronautics has. So Fort Atkinson has their projects on the list, the 5-year funding list. So it's the key to get into the process to get these funds that are coming out from the federal government. So many of our communities, they operate water and wastewater systems. They also operate electrical systems. So oftentimes we'll have, the big power companies, Xcel and We Energies, but some of our smaller communities also operate their own electric systems. So they would be happy.
Do you mind if I just jump in? So,
yes.
Can you hear it all through this one? No. Okay. So there's 3 communities here within our county that have their own utilities, and that's Jefferson, Waterloo, and Lake Mills. So just a heads up.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So they would be happy to know that there's money coming from USDA Rural Development to help support our infrastructure. There's resiliency and reliability issues. So security of these systems is important to maintain. So some of this funding can help just make those improvements to the systems. Broadband, that's another key piece. And the Public Service Commission of Wisconsin has been great about trying to get lots of money out the door the last few years about expanding broadband and providing broadband access across the state of Wisconsin. So 2 local examples Deb will talk about.
Actually, it'd be great to have Ben talk about him because he was really key in all of this, right? So yeah, we've got the Bug Tussle Wireless, 187.87-mile fiber ring in Jefferson County, connecting 84 businesses and 9,666 residential locations. And then the Edge Broadband, fiber to premise service, rural Fort Atkinson, 187 businesses and almost over 2,500 residential locations. So as we're looking at people wanting to locate here and businesses wanting to locate here, this is really key, right? You can't go to school anymore if you don't have access to the internet. So.
Okay, another funding category is brownfields. So a brownfield is a site that maybe was industrial in the past, but it's had some sort of contamination on the site that makes it not appealing to be at. So there's a lot of site cleanup that has to be done, removing the contaminants, maybe bringing fill back in to make it a buildable site. So EPA has received a lot of funding for community-wide assessment grants. So communities can go out and survey where industries formerly were and to do a phase 1 assessment to see if there's contamination still there. And then EPA will help with any cleanup costs. Wisconsin DNR also has funding, so they have funding directly to fund phase 1 and phase 2s. Typically, this is the cost of these is funded through DNR, so it's kind of a free assessment. So if you're not aware of this program, it's a good one to be aware of, just to help get sites from sitting there forever. As an old blighted site with contamination, understanding first what the limitations are on the site is important, and then you can come up with a plan for cleanup of the site. And our Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation does help fund those cleanups. They don't want those sites sitting vacant either downtown or along rivers. Let's clean them up. Let's get those sites actively used with businesses, get employees in, or having a residence there.
Again, I just want to remind all of you, we can stack all of this. There's called the capital stack. I've heard it also referred to now as a capital braid because there's so many different funding sources that are interlocking. But yeah, we can use a lot of these different programs together to try and make projects happen that normally wouldn't.
So downtown revitalization. That's another key piece. How do we keep our downtowns vibrant? How do we keep them active? How do we keep the storefronts full? The Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation has several good programs, including tax credits for the business owners, but they also are helping communities with a Main Street Connect program, providing communities with technical resources on how to improve downtowns. And then the Community Development Investment Grant will fund $200,000, $250,000, to help spur a development to happen. So for example, you can give the local example if you don't mind.
Yeah, of course. So there's a couple of examples locally. One, of course, the town square was a recipient of the CDI grant. There's a couple more I've got on another slide here. Here, Hayes Auto in Watertown, they were a recipient of a grant through WEDC, and then also Lewis Station Winery down in Lake Mills.
Perfect. Thank you. All right, so now to touch on incentives for businesses. State and federal programs for businesses want to help businesses improve the training of their workforce, to help create more jobs, to help businesses with their capital investments, so costs of expanding the business, costs of buying new machinery, and to help, just in general, help a business grow and succeed here in Wisconsin. So rural development has a Wisconsin department, but they provide funding directly to businesses. There's a cooperative grant that will help business cooperatives expand. They have also a Rural Energy for America program, which funds energy efficiencies, so helping a business make additional investments so that they can pay less in energy costs. An example of this is with ACE Ethanol. So they use this REAP grant to invest in their facility to decrease their operational costs. Rural development also provides grants to micro-enterprise development organizations to help grow through micro loan revolving loan funds, to provide that technical assistance to businesses. There's also a rural business development grant. So it's again for smaller businesses with 50 workers or less, and less than $1 million in gross revenue. Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation also provides resources directly for businesses through business development tax credits. There is a certified site program that WEDC offers. So they work with communities, and communities identify sites that are ready for development. So when a business wants to put a headquarters in or a new facility for manufacturing, these sites are ready to go. They're developable and kind of doors open to start developing. So WEDC helps coordinate that. They also have an industrial revenue bond, which provides a benefit for investment, low interest.
Yep.
WEDC also has a new business venture certification, helping early stage businesses get up and going and operating. There's a tax credit that goes along with that. Similar to helping new startups, a technology development loan program to help with the launch of innovative products and services. And the other thing is the bounce back. Do you want to talk about that one?
Yeah, just for a second. So for the last couple of years since COVID came through, WEDC implemented what's called the Main Street Bounce Back Grant. It really was a $10,000 grant for businesses that were looking to occupy a space that was previously vacant. That expired at the end of last year, but the governor has it tentatively in his budget. So if that does come back through, then it could be an opportunity for people to invest again.
Kind of in the interest of time, I'm going to kind of skip quickly through some of these so we can get to the question and answer. But WEDC also provides these additional capital catalyst programs and entrepreneurial grants. Maybe if you want to talk about specifics on the work.
Yeah, so the capacity building grant, WEDC offered a capacity building grant for us as we were starting what we call the Heartland Housing Initiative. And so we opened up consulting dollars to communities that were looking to bring in housing of any type, whatever their needs were. And so we've had 2 rounds of grants, or 2 rounds of applications from communities. The 6 communities that applied and were recipients are Randolph, Palmyra, Lake Mills, Beaver Dam, Waterloo, and Whitewater. And each of them had their own specific needs and we were able to offer them time with a consultant. A lot of them took advantage of putting together a market study, and the market study helps to explain to them, what your housing needs really are, how much you can charge for rental or home units, and so it's helping us to then market that to different developers. Phase 2, WEDC is allowing us to apply to establish a revolving loan fund that could help to fund gaps for developers, and that's something that we're going to be announcing formally at a housing summit that we've got going on May 18th. The City of Fort Atkinson had also applied for a Capital Catalyst revolving loan fund, and this is a kind of cool fund. So the city had $300,000 that they put in. It was matched by WEDC for another $300,000, and this allows for low interest loans for development within their community. So in the City of Fort Atkinson, you can see it's pretty easy to qualify, encouraging new private investment in the city. It does have to be limited to companies, to businesses. It's not for building a house, for instance. But there's a $600,000 loan fund, and it's 2% interest. So right now, that's really good money.
Let's click through this. Just a quick plug for this US EDA program, Public Works and Economic Development Program. So if your community has a big business that needs to expand or is looking at coming into your community, that provides a lot of jobs. This is a big funding source. It can provide a minimum of $1 million. The average grant size is $1.4 million, so it will help fund infrastructure expansion or roads expansion. So keep this one in mind because it's a good program and they're trying to get money out to Wisconsin. So under the Inflation Reduction Act of 22, we're still learning more about this program, but there's some really interesting opportunities for investing in energy efficiencies. For businesses, if you invest, there's a 30% tax credit up to a 70% tax credit for putting in things that can provide energy efficiencies. And this also is for multifamily housing. So it's businesses, but also these higher density residential. On the community side, communities guidance is still coming out from the U.S. Treasury, but what it sounds like, communities can still do these energy efficiency improvements, but they don't need tax credits. They're tax exempt, right? So the feds are looking at cutting a check back to the communities for investing in these energy improvements. So you think about wastewater treatment plants that use a whole lot of energy to clean wastewater. Investments into that will help kind of the long-term operating costs of those facilities. So keep your eyes on this fund.
So I also wanted to mention that Jefferson County has our own revolving loan fund. The county put in $500,000, and then we had 5 lenders that also participate, including Exonia Bank. Thank you, Mark. So quick little plug there. You can see here, really, we're looking to try and support living wage jobs. And so the last item on this list is encouraging and financially supporting investments that are necessary to retain or create jobs that pay at least Jefferson County average annual wage of $22.29 per hour. So we're really looking to try and support that type of growth within our county. And so our organization administers this revolving loan fund as well as the Fort Atkinson Capital Catalyst revolving loan fund. Also good to note that there are local incentives available through different organizations. Check with your community to see if they've got an RDA and if they've got revolving loan funds, and if so, if they've got funds available. There are some communities that have downtown improvement and facade grant programs, so you can improve the outside of the buildings, and then revitalization loan program. So also thought it'd be kind of cool. The city kicks off the Capital Catalyst Loan Fund with Pete's Tire. Just pulled that quick little headline. That's down in Fort Atkinson. They were able to take advantage not only of the county revolving loan fund, but then also the Fort Atkinson Capital Catalyst revolving loan fund.
Thanks. So as Deb talked about initially, there's such a demand for housing. I don't remember your statistic. Was it 3,200 homes? 2,400 homes by 2030. So that's 8 years away. We have a 2% vacancy rate. And so it's so important for our communities to provide housing options. And it can trickle down where developing senior facilities, senior living facilities, so seniors can move out of where they are existing and open up new homes for first-time home buyers. So some funding opportunities to help the state of Wisconsin really meet this funding gap is USDA. They do provide low interest rate loans. They're providing housing assistance for businesses that need employees and have off-farm labor. So you've got businesses lately that are putting up kind of dormitories for their workers. So this is a funding source that might help with that. WEDA in Wisconsin has a housing tax credit. There's a revolving loan fund in Jefferson County that's in progress. Do you want to touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, so that's just something that we were talking about we're going to be announcing in May. So we're working to help to incent developers from coming here. Typically what we're finding is that developers are having between a $20,000 and $25,000 per unit gap in order to make it cash flow. So our goal is to try and put that together by May of 2023. And we've got some different funding sources we're looking at. If anyone else would like to be involved, let us know. But then also there's the Home Consortium. So the Home Consortium is there's only 4 counties that participate here, and that's Jefferson, Waukesha, Washington, and Ozaukee County, and there's developer assistance that's available. It's on a first-come, first-served basis and depends on the fund availability to support the housing projects. So a local example of this is the Globe Apartments at 201 South Water Street in Watertown. It's a 48-unit, low and moderate income rental housing project, and they were awarded $435,000 to develop 11 of those units for people with disabilities. So that's just an example.
Okay, for the homeowner, so students who are looking to buy your first home in the future, there are programs out there that help with down payments on your first-time home. Those can be offered through USDA again, and WEDA has those programs. So definitely something to look at in the future to help you be home buyers.
And then I thought I'd just, again, talk to the Home Consortium. So the Home Consortium doesn't only help developers. They also have their own program, and I've got a lot of stats here, so I've got it all written down. So in order to be eligible for this program, you must have an annual household income at or below 80% of the area county median income, which for a family of 4 is $70,500, so maybe a little bit higher than what you would think. So the First-Time Homebuyer Grant Program offers forgivable loans. Again, students, I would listen up here because you can get up to $10,000 in forgivable loans. It's forgivable after living in the property for 5 years. And that can be used for down payment and or closing costs, and maximum purchase price in Jefferson County for existing housing, $238,000. So as you're looking at a 20% down payment, that's pretty considerable, or $261,000 for new construction. They also have a home buyer or a homeowner rehab program, and that's a no-interest deferred loan for owner-occupied single-family attached or detached units such as condominiums until the time of transfer. So what that means is if you know someone who's living in a home and there's some kind of a major issue with the home, maybe they need a roof, maybe there's structural, maybe there's windows, furnace, that type of thing, this rehab program is available, 0% interest, and they don't have to make payments on it until time of transfer. So that means, I hate to say it, either death or if they sell the property. So it's a great program that's available. And that was it. We did pretty well on timing. There's a lot of information there, so I really appreciate you all kind of working through it with us. But you can go through to our website, thriveed.org/downloads to download the presentation. And if you have questions, well, we'll get to questions here, but here's also our contact information. So both Brea and I have our contact information on here. But thank you.
All right.
Does anyone have any questions? I'm not surprised. Seriously, that's a lot of information to take in. Do you want to come here?
I'll borrow your microphone. Can you take us through like like an example schedule of when you might be contacted by a business, how they get tied up with you for the incentive packages and whatnot? Just example of that process.
Absolutely. So honestly, I love it when businesses are referred to me. We're also involved in quite a few different organizations, and then local government will make an introduction to us, and we'll go in. In fact, I've got a meeting this afternoon with a business that's looking to expand. So there are multiple sources, multiple ways that I'm introduced to a business. Referral is really the best. We'll also go out and cold call, or if I hear rumors, I'll give them a call. But we'll go out there, we'll have a meeting with them, we'll find out what they're looking to do, and then we'll connect them with the programs that we think are the best fit for them to get some money, because we realize that the more money that they invest, the stickier they are in their community, meaning they're less likely to leave, especially if they're headquartered out of state. We want to make sure that they're here so that those jobs don't get moved out of state, out of the country. We want to keep them here. Nate? Did you? Okay. I know, and we knew that coming into it, but that's the topic, right? And Brea and I had talked a little bit about that early on. I said, there's not a lot of pictures, there's a lot of words, a lot of data, but that's the topic. So that's why we want to make sure that this is all available to you all.
Thank you, ladies.
Thank you.